Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Outpost. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's start off with everything in The Outpost. After 313 did what he did, he wants one in particular awakens Lakma. At first I was like, Lakma, is it going to be like his wife or something like that? Like I thought it was like a significant other type of situation. But then later on says C, which, I mean, it's still a possibility in that regard, but I wasn't sure. And so, obviously, Ren and Janzo are not willing to help him, and which is so sad. Like, you know, it came back full circle. It's just like, despite all that they did, despite all that Janzo tried to teach him, it still didn't matter. Like, I mean, Janzo told him about making a choice, and he made his own choice. And it's like, well, whether it always benefits you or to your detriment, everyone deserves to have their own choices. So, granted, his choice isn't aligned with what you would want him to do, but at the end of the day, you told him about choice, and he made his. And so he ends up knocking both Ren and Janzo out just because it's like, right, you won't help me, then get out of the way. And so he ends up even knocking Garrett out after Garrett finds out 313 has escaped. And then it's like, man, you just going. But it's like he was gathering supplies. I figured he was trying to, like, it seems like he only wanted to awaken one out of particular. He only unlocked all of them because he didn't know which one of those pods Lakma was in. And so he wants Janzo and them to help, but it's like, right, I don't have all the necessary ingredients here, but 313 wasn't listening. He was just so adamant about awakening Lakma, and it turns out Lakma is his child. Granted, he doesn't know the word from it, but it's like, right, it basically, it's like, it came from me, but so like, it's not just other Kavi that are there, it's like Lakma, like their children are buried there too, so, which is obviously an interesting parallel for like the Black Bloods. Like, all that's mainly left of the Black Bloods, aside from the ones that are surviving, are like mainly the children, you know. So it's an interesting parallel in that regard. Janzo's doing everything he can, but he told 313 not to open it up. I guess in 313's mind, it's like, no, you're just lying because you don't want to help me. It's because I hurt you and I threatened to hurt you. Like, you're not actually going to, but it's like, no, because he was so adamant about trying to save his child, he wasn't willing to listen. So he ends up opening it up, but Janzo doesn't have what's necessary to save him like the way he saved 313, and because of that, his Lakma died, and he's pissed. Luckily, Garrett and them showed up in time, but for 313, it's like, I'd rather not live anymore. Just go ahead and kill me. And even Janzo's kind of all about it, you know, because it's like, well, because it's at first it's like, at the very least, he deserves a fair trial before, like, you know, but it's like, because it's like, he could have killed Ren, he could have killed Janzo, he could have killed Garrett, he could have killed two other guards. It's like, he's too dangerous, but for Ren, it's like, we need him, because he's the only one that can fully explain everything, so things going forward definitely aren't going to be the same. I get it too, like, Ren's like, at the very least, his child just died, everything he did was trying to save his child, so you feel a little sympathy for him in that regard. But it's like, if he had actually explained that situation, but it's not like he could have explained, but it's like, he didn't give Janzo, like, Janzo was explaining the world to you, doing everything for you, and it's just like, that betrayal of, like, but also, it's like, you can blame Janzo on that too, because, like I said, like, Garrett kept warning him over and over again, like, because Janzo kind of let his scientific discovery get the best of him, and now, knowing that, like, he could have died, but more specifically, the love of his life and their child could have died, that changes everything for Janzo, which, you could draw parallels to that as well, so it's like, they're going to lock him up for now. He's going to be back in his cell, and it's like, this, because he had made a comment before about, like, oh, how, like, jail wasn't that much of a punishment. It will be now, because like, he has to live without his child now, and all he's going to have is, like, those last images in his mind, and it's like, it sucks, but it's like, once again, he didn't listen. Janzo tried to warn him, but it's because in his mind, it's like, oh, you don't want to help me, so you're just making excuses, so it's like, if you had better prepared them for what was to come, if you hadn't betrayed them and actually explained what was going on, then maybe they would have been a lot more willing to help you, but there's no turning back time in this regard. Well, that's not 100% true, because, you know, I'm skipping around a little bit, but we do see that Janya's healing. I mean, we never got to see 2 do it to this extent. I mean, granted, like, it usually has to be like, oh, you're recently dead, but it seems like Janya's power, I mean, I think it might still apply in that case, but it seems like her power's on a whole other level. Once again, it's like they're back in their original body, so their full powers are at full extent, so. But obviously, they're just like running amok, destroying like villages, sucking up all the life that they can. It's all about not only restore, because this way, like, Janzo's way of doing it was a very like medical way of doing it. Janya could easily revive all the Kavi with like, it's about reviving the final 2 gods as well as like the entire Kavi with all the like life force that she's stolen. So, but obviously going forward from here, like, you do the split. Let's focus on Zed's, because that whole path ended up being depressing. I knew it would be. It was going to go one of multiple ways of like, oh, who's going to get it? Like, it's just, especially because it starts off a little lively, like, you know, being like, oh, I've never starved before. He's like, I can't even think of it. It's like, nope, can't even think of it, you know? And it's like, oh, like, all they ever did in the Plain of Ashes was hunting, because it's like, there was no beauty there. But then, like, you know, Nedra's dropping those major hints, because Mont's like, oh, so like, you know, he's like, yeah, that's hunting is like, you know, how him and Tobin got so close. It's close as, you know, buddies could get. And he's like, so what about you two? You did hunting together, so did you? I'm sure you two got even closer, a man and a woman. And then Nedra was dropping hints like, no, it was just all about the kill, even though there were other things to kind of take note of. He was like, what? There was no beauty in the Plains of Ash. What else was there taking note? It's like, and just like, you could just see her just being like, oh, you're such a thick-headed moron, Zed. Like, pay attention to what I'm laying down in front of you. Because it's obvious, like, Zed kind of has a thing for her, because he's trying, that's why, it's not just best friends, it's that, well, it is that best friends thing, / there's more between us, but neither one of us is really willing to take that step forward. But it's like, she's kind of hinting at it pretty hard, but even the fact that Zed's had tried so hard to make things good between them, didn't seem like just a best friend thing, considering how much limited time he thought he probably had left. I thought he was going to try and make those moves, but I think he was just too scared, because it's like, what if I did, and she didn't feel the same way, and, you know, especially because in his mind, it's like, I'll live life kind of more to the fullest after I know that Golu, the god which my Kenji's supposed to go into, is dead. Then I'll know, like, phew, I got the rest of my life ahead of me, but until then, it's like, I've got a ticking clock on the top of my head, so, I even love, like, because they were bunkered down and like a storm had hit, and then Mutt being like, I love, like, he's so giddy between them. He's like, so what happened? Did you kiss? It's like, nope, the storm ended and we dug ourselves out of there, and that was it. And Mutt's almost like, huh. But then he was also like, all this talk about foods kind of make me hungry. It's like, when can you never eat, Mutt? And he's like, I can't think of a time. So, but while they're looking for Golu's body, they end up, discovering these flowers, which Nedra notices, but Zed's like, yeah, they're beautiful, they're pretty, because she's grown to appreciate this world, even though, like, she was kind of, you know, it's like, right, I mean, especially when all you've ever really known is the Plain of Ashes, this world must seem, like, breathtaking, but it's like, right, there's these flowers here, but it's like the dead of winter, and, like, there's only these patches of flowers, and Zed's like, yes, the flowers are beautiful. It's like, no, you idiot, like, there's most likely an underground cavern, and ends up pointing them in the right direction, because it's like, right, based on the map, this is where Golu should be buried. So it's like, cool, find Golu, and they end up stabbing him. It's like, is that enough? And I'm like, I don't think it is. And so the one that took Tobin's Kinj pops up, and she's teleporting all over the place. But luckily, Mutt got in a really good blow against her, but she teleported away. I mean, whether she had to go back to Janya to heal, probably didn't, because it was just like a blow from the hammer. It might have cracked some ribs or something, but it's also like, these gods are super sturdy. Even without healing, they keep trucking along. So it takes a lot to kill them. Like, you'd have to do a lot, but also, once again, Janya has to be the first one to get it, because I don't see her being able to heal herself necessarily. Well, I'm sure, like, if she's given the opportunity to heal, like, a whole bunch of, like, you have, once again, go for the healer first. Like, that's just typical video game logic. Specifically, I think of, like, JRPG, well, RPGs in general, but specifically JRPGs, where it's like, oh, there's someone in the battle that heals certain people. It's like, you need to take them off the board immediately type of situation. So, I think that's kind of fascinating. to kind of think about. But regardless, luckily that was kind of taken care of. But it's like, right, is that actually enough to kill this thing? So they end up burning him, and I'm like, oh, that's not going to work, is it? I thought like his body might be charred or whatever a little bit, but it's like, no, it burned good. It got burned up good. There was literally nothing but ash and bones left. So like it worked. Because I was about to say like chop his head off or something, but it's like regardless of anything. Because for one, I think like that could happen on the CW, but I feel like that's a little darker than they're willing to go with just like how like slicing someone's head off. Like they're probably not willing to really go that route necessarily, even though that, but even then it kind of proves like maybe it might slow the healing process. It might make it impossible. Who knows how that will fully work? Because I would have been like, I thought they burned that body good. There's no like, I was like, there's no way. But it's like later on Jonya's able to reconstitute. It just takes more souls to do. I'm like, wow. Which begs the question, it's like, if applied, but then you'd have to rely on Jonya to bring everyone back. I don't know, because it's probably a little different. Because at least there were bones left, there was something left to reconstitute, whereas like when the god with the black kinge touches you, like everything goes. You're completely turned to dust. Like there's no even bones left. So, but you would think Jonya would be able to reconstitute all the people, but you'd have to go to where their bodies were. Like I don't know if that would even necessarily work. It probably wouldn't, because the way the black kinge works and everything. So I don't. But it opens a possibility that it could. But I think, like I said, burning the body and the black kinge death are like two very different deaths. I think you can come back from being burned and turn to nothing but bones and ash, but I don't think you can from a black kinge death, but we'll see. And they kind of walked away kind of like feeling victorious, but then there's like the black kinge god, and it's like, right, he doesn't know that Golu's dead, but also it's like, why is he coming this way? Did like the one that was teleporting tell him what's up? And she ends up tracking them down, and so it's a conversation about like, right, someone needs to take the kinge. Like Zed wants to like run, but then like Nedra's like, give it to him like meat or something, that way they won't know. And so like Zed hides his hands behind his back when the that god shows up, and it's like, right, who has it? I was like, I immediately was like, oh, it's going to be Nedra, because I figured that was going to be. I was actually surprised when it ended up being Mutt, and I was like, dude, especially because he got mortally wounded. I was like, oh no. I was like, are we doing this? I was like, don't do this. Don't do this to Janzo. Don't do this to Warlita, because this is like, other than like, his child on the way and, his sister, but it's still like, no, like, Mutt, it's like, this is his brother. Like, don't do that. Don't, and him and Warlita, it's just like, either way, you knew it was going to be tragic, because if it's Mutt, that's sad. If it's Nedra, it's going to be sad. But I thought, like, the fact is, because it's like, I can't just kill you, because if I kill you, the kinge is going to find its way to someone. It has to be specifically, the black kinge has to kill you for it to transport, for the kinge to find its way back to your body. It has to be that specific death to lead to that. So she ends up leaving Mutt behind. And that time, Nedra finds him, and he's just like, here, take the kinge and run. And she's like, if you run into Zed, tell him. And he's like, tell him what? And she's like, never mind. I was like, no, say what you need to say, please. I was like, the fact is you can't say it means like he's never gonna know. I was like, no, please don't. Luckily, Zed had his run in with the black kinge, and I love him being like, oh, like, what, you too afraid to fight me one-on-one without your buddies? And he got pretty hurt during the fight, but he stabbed him and like kicked the sword so that it would stab deeper into the tree, so he got stuck. But then like the other one came and saved him, so I was like, oh god, these bastards are going to be super hard to kill. Nedra's running away with the kinge, and luckily Zed meets up with Mutt and is like, it's okay, they're not gonna because they were gonna kill Mutt because he was tired of the game, but luckily Zed was able to kind of send them on their ways, because it's like, right, they gotta focus more on bringing Golu back. So he drags Mutt away. He's like, it's okay, they're not after you. It's like, he's like, just go protect Nedra and make sure she's okay. And so he catches up with her, which she's like, it doesn't matter, no one's going to care if I die. Like, your leg is messed up, so you're definitely not going to run. You never beat me in a race. He's like, of course I did. She's like, only when you cheated. And he's like, of course I don't want you to die. She's like, why? No one cares. He's like, I care. Why? Because you're important. you know, because we're friends. It's like, you know, we're obviously more than friends. And then she kisses him, and it's just kind of like not wanting this to be the end of the story. It's like, right, I'll run away, and then we'll meet back up at the nightshade, and no more wasting time. Because that's the whole thing of, like, Zed was talking about someday. The moment he was referencing someday at the beginning, you were like, you saw which direction the wind was gonna blow. You were hoping it wouldn't, but you figured it would. And it's just kind of, Nedra even saying that whole thing. It's like, oh, it's basically like saying, like, oh, I'm one day away from retirement. You know, it's that joke, essentially. It's like, oh, God, please don't. And he hears the weapons clanging in the distance, and it's Nedra versus the Black Kitten. Teleporting bastard, she gets behind Nedra and stabs her. And even at the end, Nedra looks at Zed and kind of smiles. It's like, at least she dies knowing how he feels, and at least he knows how she felt. And it's just like, but just when, like, once again, it was going to be a toss-up. Either Warlita and Mutt having been where they are, and that doesn't work, like, you know, things are that way, or like it was Zed and Nedra before they even had the opportunity, you know. And it's interesting because it kind of ties in a little bit with Luna and Talon's storyline, but we'll get to that soon enough. But it's like, of course it's going to end this way, and it's like, no, that's so heartbreaking, man. And then him going over to all that was left of her, and he picked one of those flowers that she thought was beautiful and put it on the what was left of her, you know. Zed's going to make double sure, like, he's going to get his revenge again. It's like, that bastard's killed. I mean, to be fair, he's killed everyone. I mean, it's not like any of them are innocent, but him and Johnny are the ones that have the most blood on their hands. He's the one that's kind of killed the most, like, obviously everyone they care about. Felista, God, Tobin, I was blinking for a second. And now Nedra, it's like, jeez. Because now this also sets it up in your mind of, like, what does this mean for the Tobin thing? I mean, not Tobin, Talon thing. Because it's like, Talon might not be, like, because of how this whole thing played out with Zed, it might not be Talon in it. And part of me's like, is it going to be Luna? I was like, please don't let it be Luna. Please, 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 please don't let it be Luna. Don't let it be Talon. I was actually kind of surprised. Like the moment they split it up like that, I was like, oh, it's not going to be Zed. I think they were hinting like, oh, it's going to be Zed. Like, dude, this has just been the most depressing ass season, dude. Like, there's been just so much death this season. I mean, the previous seasons have had quite a bit of death, sure, but like nothing to this scale. I mean, Jonya's like running through villages like it's nothing, and then on top of this, like, we're dropping important characters. Like I said, like Ballista, Tobin, like it's nothing. I mean, Nedra literally just got out of the plane of ashes, out of one situation with the Black Fist, to now have to deal with this and be dead. It's just, that just sucks. Mutt almost got it. Like, holy crap. Try to be kind of swoop back into the more slightly lightheartedness is that we have Luna and Talon walking, and it's just like she's trying to do like her knife tricks, and it's like, and Talon coughs, and she's like, doesn't count, you coughed. And it's like, I love Talon throws the first one. It's like, oh, that's pretty impressive. But like, Luna's like, how do I know that's where you meant to aim? Gets the other knife, throws it in the exact spot. It's like, you need to teach me that. It's like, also, pay up. And Luna's like, yeah, I don't have the money. It's like, of course you don't. They end up running into the scam artist again. I wasn't expecting that. That's pretty dope. And like, they kind of put him to shame. Talon warns everybody. But I also love that Luna's still kind of like that scummy person in the sense that she's like, oh wow, the con's good. And it's like, Talon's looking at him, is like, what? I'm sorry, but I mean, he's really good at this, like conning people. Like, you know, I'm sure like for her, it's like, if it were under different circumstances, I'd actually be happier. I'd be pretty impressed. I was like, why didn't I ever think of this scam, you know? But yeah, everyone ended up getting their stuff back, and as Talon warned, it's like, right, those creatures are coming, you need to run. She even said like, oh, I'm Talon from the Outpost, and I'm sure people, I mean, we know that villager in particular, she's like, oh my god, you're Talon, like, we know what you did about the whole like Yavala situation. So I'm like, so there's probably a lot of word about who she is specifically, kind of being like the hero of this realm and stuff like that to a certain extent. So that her warning probably carries a little more weight. They didn't really have the same like reactions, but you never know. Like, they probably didn't focus on it, but it's like probably like they probably. So I love Talon being like, yeah, if I see you again, I'll kill you. I'm like, you're gonna run into that guy again, some shape or form. You're going to under what circumstances, him performing another scam, I don't know, but you can definitely tell you're going to most likely run into him again. So that's going to definitely be interesting. But other than that. them playing cards and everything. She's like, oh wow, you actually don't cheat at Octo. It's like, I told you. It's like, all right, well, it's like, but Luna enjoys the, like, drinking and talking to her buddy. It's like I said, I really think it's so sweet, the relationship they developed. Because sadly, like, Talon never had that relationship with Iliad, like, the Dragman. Like, no, like, but she does with Luna, and I think, like I said, I think it's almost like it's kind of filling that void a little bit for their respective siblings, a little bit, but it's also just like a friendship born out of the fact is they're so much alike, and so it's like, are you going to tell me about what happened between you and Garrett? And she's like, it's none of your business. It's like, yeah, he's handsome. Don't even tell him I said anything like that, though. But it's like, right, you should marry that guy. And it's like, wait, did he say something to you? Were you eavesdropping? It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, he proposed to me. It's like, what? That's crazy. That's awesome. Do I get to go to the wedding? I've never actually been to a wedding. She's like, I didn't accept. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. And it's like, well, not saying anything at all is an answer in its own right. It's pretty much a no, considering everything that's on the line, though. And I love that. I love even Luna being like, are you an idiot? It's like because obviously, like, it's like, because of the way you two look at each other, like, that's such an obvious perfect fit. It's like, well, if you don't want him, like, maybe I'll take him. It's like, he says I remind him of you, so obviously I'm his type. It's like, aren't you a little young for him? Nah, he's too old for me. I'm like, I like that. But it did get Talon wondering, because it's like, what does she really want at the end of the day, But they end up at the place where Zed got his Kenjin. Is like, right, Aster's supposed to be here somewhere. But then obviously she gets the message from the god being like, hey, we've woken another one. All that's left is your Kenj. Your time in this world is up. We're coming for your Kenj. We're going to wake Aster. So, and for Talon, it's like she thinks Zed's dead. Obviously he's not, but it doesn't make what happened any less sad. So, down to the wire. We only got like 3 episodes left anyway, but it's like, it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see how this all pans out. Like I said, like, will Talon end up keeping Aster? Because it has to be given willingly, and I don't see Talon giving over her Kenj willingly to anybody for whatever circumstance, because she never would want to put Luna in that position. So, but I was worried that Luna might get it and end up sacrificing herself just so Talon doesn't die. But it's like, Talon would never put Luna in that position, even if it means keeping the Kenj away from them. It puts too much of a target on her back. So I think Talon would rather die herself than let anyone else take that plunge for her. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see and how this whole Aster situation plays out, because considering their circumstances, she might not have any choice but to wake him. And I think that's going to be for the greater good, having at least one of them on her side, because I think he would be on their side, because once again, Talon only got fragments of the story. She doesn't have the full story about Aster's circumstances. Like, I think he's all about protecting this world from his, like, brothers and sisters. But we'll definitely see how it all plays out going forward into the next episode. Like I said, kind of a heartbreaking episode, but we'll see what happens next. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.